get viewing rights to the platform. Then there's an added functionality, which is what we call the execution version. With the execution version, you can actually secure a rate on the platform, which will become a binding transaction between ourselves as the bank and our client. And then that then follows the normal procedure around submission of documents for ex-con purposes and so forth. We'll demonstrate in the instance that I, as a client, execution version, and I'm basically an exporter, and therefore I receive foreign currency in dollars presumably. And from my office, I would then want to sell those dollars to the bank. Basically, I would then click on sell US dollars. And the pop-up there that comes up, I would then input the amount that I want to sell. Let's say business is good, so it's $50,000. You'll then see that it's against SZL. We have a default value date, which is the date on which the transaction get code, and then it streams a price which then has accept and reject. Basically gives 5 minutes, but in the interim, obviously because the exchange rates will move, you'll see that the rate there will change periodically. In the event that I'm happy with the rate, I will then, and then it gives me a deal ticket. For the execution version, it's very important to note that there's legal documentation that we need to sign prior to access. Basically, that is to cover both the bank and our clients. And with respect to these particular transactions, it is then a binding transaction which both parties will then have to settle on that value date. It's also important to note that this is not a speculative trading tool. So there has to be an underlying transaction on the back of what you would then capture in e-market. So as an exporter, have to have then exported goods for which you have received the proceeds or anticipate proceeds. And similarly for importers, you would then have to evidence that there's actually goods or services that you have procured from abroad. So once you've concluded this transaction, basically you would then proceed with completing particularly the ex-con forms, and then the bank forms as well, where you would then instruct the bank, basically give us the payment instructions. I think that is basically it on the execution version, but I think what I want to highlight is what we term the economics portal. So e-market is then linked to our economics division. We have a fully fledged division of which Ferishka is a part of, and they publish articles on a daily basis on a number of different topics. So with access to e-market, you then have access to the economics portal, which, as you can see here, I've selected economics. And we have what we call the Africa brief, which basically looks at different countries in Africa. But listed here is just the list of articles that have been published in the past couple of days. As you can see, there's a daily one, which on Tuesday focused on inflation. The previous one on Monday was mining focused. There was one on the SONA. You then obviously then have different articles that are published based on fixed income, for example. We spoke earlier around what will happen with the fixed income markets should SA get downgraded. We've got articles on currencies, equities, so different asset classes that our clients may be interested in are also in the portal. I think from our perspective, knowledge is key. And the more our clients know about what's happening in the world economy, the more informed a decision you can make about your FX exposure, whether you want to hedge or not. You then basically create a view around which you can then manage your Forex exposure. I think the other thing to note on the e-market, on the execution version, you do then also get a blotter, which is basically what you see at the bottom there. And that is basically a list of all the trades that you would have concluded over a period of time, and then you can use this for audit purposes and I think by and large, in the interest of time, that is all that I can or I should show you for now. The way that you do get access to eMarket basically is to contact us as Global Markets. We will then give you access, firstly as view only, but should you then require, we can then upgrade that access to the execution version pending the submission and signing of the necessary documentation. That's it from me. I hope you're not confused.
Are there any questions for Libya on e-market trader solution before I go into the closing? Any questions? Well confused. Thank you very much. Okay. I think just given the proximity of the budget speech, I thought I might close with a quote from the budget speech and a short story. So I think the quote is from the Honorable Minister of Finance during his second maiden speech, where he said, "His Majesty reminds us that the time is of the essence in our socio-economic transformation, and that above all else we must keep moving forward." I think my intuitive bones are telling me he's hinting at bank can help support us in our market and moving forward. And I think the second thing he's telling us is around executing now. We have some more information at our hands. What are we going to do with it? Second thing, keeping with the optimistic note that we've carried this discussion and this forum with around opportunity and business resilience. I don't know if any of you know the story of Betty Nesmith. So Betty Nesmith used to be a secretary in a bank in 1951, and she was quite intrigued by the efficiency of the typewriter and how it improved so many areas of the business. But she also realized that by typing, when there was lots of typos, also created inefficiencies. So what she did, she took a concoction of water and a paint-based mixture, put it into a container, what we now know as Tipex, and shortly afterwards she left the bank in 1956, quit her job and started to sell Tipex. In 1979, Gillette, I don't know if you know Gillette, the company, bought her liquid paper corporation for $47.5 million. Just an indication of probably no opportunity at all. A lady with a little bit of water and paint, what she's managed to do in possibly the banking sector and innovation and tying into the youth and opportunity and technology. And I think that's the opportunity that we have under us. So what are the other opportunities that are right under our noses? What other citrus in our market can we squeeze to make lemonade? While our competition is sleeping, what else can we do to really make an impact in the Eswatini market? And I guess this is my challenge for you this year, and I hope Standard Bank has helped you today towards your journey in terms of achieving your success. In closing, I want to thank you all for your attendance today, Standard Bank customers, future Standard Bank customers, our viewers, for attending today. We'd also like to thank our guest speakers from all the way in Matsapa and as close as South Africa. for joining us today. We'd also like to thank our CE for his guidance, leadership, and presence, and our board members that are present here today, and our executive management and staff. Our marketing team for arranging this session today. I think they've done a fantastic job with the planning and the arrangements. And last but not least, also to extend our thanks to NAMBoard, John Deere, and Royal Swazi for allowing us to host the event today. Thank you so much, and have a fantastic day.
We have almost come to the end of our broadcast here at the Eswatini, Standard Bank Eswatini Economic Forum 2020, which Standard Bank convened at the Royal Eswatini Convention Center for the third time running now. And I think this is a very brilliant activity in terms of making sure that stakeholders contribute towards moving the country forward. His Majesty the King recently said that the country should not be found stagnant or moving or standing in one position, but we should keep moving forward. And Standard Bank, and I don't know if it's a coincidence that the King said we should move forward, and Standard Bank is, as a bank that prides itself by moving the country forward, convened such an event at such a particular time. And with me right now as we conclude this event is Mr. Charles Ahlachwayo, who is head of personal personal and business banking at Standard Bank, who also wants to make some remarks about some of his views and sentiments pertaining to some of the submissions that were made, and in particular the bank's role towards growing the agribusiness space in the Kingdom of Eswatini. Mr. Ahlachwayo, thank you so much for joining us once again here today, and a pleasure to have you in our studio right here. And you have been part of the whole event here from the time it started to the time when our keynote speakers, Farouche Kivi, the group, Standard Bank Group economists, made their submissions, and Dr. Dumsile as well. You may want to start off by sharing your views and your sentiments after the two submissions that were made by your two keynote speakers.
Thank you very much for the opportunity. I think I share the same sentiments. We are very positive about the future, looking at where we are coming from and what we have seen happen in the past year, and the matrices that we're seeing coming out of the budget speech for 2020-2021. I think the future looks a whole lot better than where we are coming from, and we are very positive about that.
Yeah. And from where you are sitting as a head of personal and business banking, the previous outlook in terms of how commentators and economists had always been portraying the current economic situation, did that affect your business in any way with regards to how the market was conducting business with the bank? And your outlook now that these two economists are saying the future looks optimistic?
Well, certainly it did, because we do business with the business people that are operating in the kingdom. If those businesses are taking strain, by extension we're also going to take strain. There's a number of businesses that we saw taking strain in the course of the year, and by extension we also took strain. Businesses that were not paid over an extended period of time could barely operate. We had to take provisions. So we definitely did feel the pinch as well. But I must say that one really needs to commend the efforts that the government has put in, because we're seeing the traction, we're seeing an improvement. And when we look at the budget that has been presented right now, it portrays an even more positive future. So it is from that perspective that we take a lot of comfort that things are going to get better going forward. We have seen some payments coming through, and we've seen some activity taking place with some of our businesses. We are not out of the woods as yet, because we still have a few that are still struggling. But if we look at what has been presented, we do believe that the future is a whole lot better than where we're coming from.
Yeah. And we've heard quite a number of economists and commentators saying we need to diversify the economy. And submissions by the two keynote speakers here today reinforce that narrative. And as one of those, I believe the agro-processing sector is one of those. As much as it started this narrative last year, and it's coming back today and say we need to look at value addition opportunities. And I know that Standard Bank is also looking at strengthening its agro-business sector. What are the opportunities within this sector, and how do you hope to engage the market more to make sure that we derive some meaningful benefits out of this sector?
Our purpose as Standard Bank as Eswatini is our home, we drive a growth. And in the agri space, we see a very great opportunity for us to put that talk into practice, because there is plenty of opportunities that are in the agri space. For a very long time, I think there has been a lot of focus in the sugar industry, which has obviously done very well. But there are opportunities in other crops as well, as you'd have heard the presentation by NAMBOARD. The issue of food security is certainly a key focus area for the country. The fact that people need to eat is something that we cannot run away from. If you look at the amount of food that we are still importing, as a country, it's a very clear indication that there's so much opportunity for us to grow our economy and help create employment within the kingdom, just based on what those numbers are telling us. So from our perspective as well, we have taken a very deliberate view that we are going to focus in helping our farmers in the agric space. And when we are talking about that aspect, we are not only looking at the big commercial farmers, we are also looking at the small and medium scale farmers, where we are looking at partnership opportunities with institutions such as NAMBOARD, with institutions such as Eswatini, where we identify the value chains and where we can add value. Because the key thing is, if the farmers have identified opportunities, the likes of NAMBOARD are assisting them to get a market, and they've got the right level of expertise, and if they do not, they've got the right technical advisors who are helping them in that aspect. Then if you look at that end to end, it presents a bankable proposition, a viable proposition, because at the end of the day, what we're trying to do is to look for bankable propositions, where we make sure that if we put in that money, they are indeed going to be able to generate income that is going to help repay that debt. And by so doing, we are helping create employment in areas that was not happening in the past.
And I think I'm excited to hear that the means of doing this is by creating collaborations with the people with the technical expertise, such as your Swade, your NAMBOARD, and the likes. But maybe one of the issues we need to also talk about from as head of personal and business banking at Standard Bank is the issue of how we strengthen credit towards businesses in the country. You know, when His Majesty says declares the year 2020 as the year of small and medium enterprises, this also needs to translate into how we resource this sector. And you are probably responsible for coming out with strategies in terms of saying, how do we do this in a practical manner to make sure that this statement is not just a narrative coming from our principals, but we are able to domesticate it.
Absolutely. So the most important thing is the viability of the project. And based on what we have seen so far, and especially as you go lower in the segments, is the importance of these partnerships that we're talking about. So if you partner with institutions like your NAMBOARD, who will make sure that once the farmer has produced their produce, there is a market. If you partner with people like your Eswatini, who even assist with the technical aspect of farming, who will make sure that if you put in your money there, there's almost a guarantee that there's going to be proper management along the line, and you are guaranteed that there is going to be a market. There's going to be the market. Then it makes the proposition to be bankable. It makes the proposition to be viable. That for financial institutions is the most important aspect. The second aspect that has been a challenge over years is obviously the issue of collateral. But it must be said that collateral is secondary. The primary aspect is ensuring that where you are putting that money, that project is going to be viable, it is indeed going to generate what it is intended to generate, and the money is going to come back. And then the issue of collateral, there's work that we are doing around that. And one of the aspects that I think government is also assisting with is the issue of the guarantee schemes for the lower end of the market, where they do guarantee a portion of that debt. And we don't necessarily look at 100% guarantee, because collateral is meant to say, in the unlikely event that something tragic happens and the customer is unable to repay, then you need to be able to recover something. So that is why then we don't look at 100% around that. But it is still important, because a business is a business, something can happen. So I think those partnerships are very important, because that is what makes the deal to be viable.
Yeah. And I think now coming back to the same model that you apply when you try and make sure that for instance, the partnerships you have with your Swade, your NAMBOARD, and the likes, you know, with regards to the issue of financing SMEs in the country, what types of collaboration exists that will probably ensure that when you extend credit, you are working with people who work with the people who need capacity in that area?
So I think a very good example is what is happening in the sugar industry. What Swade is doing that's in that space, they're basically providing the technical expertise through the extension officers. There is a guaranteed market, so we know that there is definitely a guaranteed off-taker. And then what then we do, we come in and fund the working capital facilities for those farmers. So because we know that the other aspects are covered.
Yeah. Charles, thank you so much for joining us. Although I would have wanted to have you reinforce or to sort of define what it means to the average business person out there when we say conducting business, resilient business in a tough economic situation. It is easy to understand this from a broader perspective, like where you are coming from as Standard Bank. But to the average business person, I think they also need to understand that resilience is key in a tough economic situation.
That is true. That is very true. I think in simple terms, basically what we are saying is that the environment out there is not easy. There are challenges, and challenges will continue to be there. They are more severe in certain times than other times. But we need, as businesses, we need to be in a position to prepare ourselves adequately enough for us to be able to withstand and sustain those challenges that we come across in those environments. And with the right partnerships and the right level of engagements with your stakeholders, which includes your financiers, which includes the stakeholders that I was referring to, it is a whole lot easier to get to that level of resilience.
Charles, thank you so much for talking to us this morning.
Thank you very much.
Charles Tlachwayo, lo Head of Personal and Business Banking at Standard Bank. Akhulumisa ke indzaba yokuthi libhange litimisele kangakanani kubambisana nabosomabhizinisi nama-stakeholders in making sure we create a conducive business environment. The idea is to move Eswatini forward. Eswatini, thank you so much for joining us once again in this interview.